Hey, Paul, isn't there a dress code for this meeting?
Well, you're in scrubs, right?
Yeah.
Great, we'll get started. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Andrew Zale, the Chair for the Board of Dentistry. Welcome to the Board of Dentistry's hybrid meeting. This meeting is being conducted virtually and in person, and this meeting is being recorded. I'll take roll call after the video and information is provided on internet and phone access for this meeting. A short video will be shown to explain how the procedures for this hybrid meeting be conducted. Can you play the video, please? Thank you.
Welcome to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting. When the meeting begins momentarily, the chair will take a roll call, explain any specific rules for this particular board, and then move to public comment. The name of the board member will appear on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. For instance, this is board member Y, and this is board member E. Public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. You can indicate that you are ready to testify by clicking on the Raise Hand button being circled by the mouse on your screen now. At the appropriate time, the board will recognize you to speak and ask you to unmute your mic as shown here. Again, public testimony will be accepted at the beginning of the meeting and before each agenda item. Public attendees will not be able to unmute their microphone until recognized by the board. Public attendees who are recognized to testify will be asked to identify themselves by name and their affiliated organization if applicable. Please mute your microphone when you are finished speaking, as a courtesy to others and members of the board. Public attendees will not be able to unmute themselves after the testimony is completed unless recognized again after raising their hand. At some point during the meeting, the board may choose to move into executive session. When the board moves into executive session, the board members' microphones and video feeds will be turned off, and a similar screen as you see now will be displayed. When the board returns from executive session, their microphones will be turned on as well as their video cameras. Welcome again to the Professional and Vocational Licensing Virtual Board Meeting. At this time, the chair will call the meeting to order and take a roll call, as well as explain any additional rules that may be specific to this board.
Dr. Law, would you mind reading the internet and phone access for this meeting?
Sure.
Thank you.
Internet access. To view the meeting and provide live oral testimony, please use the link at the top of the agenda. You'll be asked to enter your name. The board requests that you enter your full name, but you may use a pseudonym or other identifier in which you remain anonymous. You will also be asked for an email address. You may fill this field with any entry in an EMAT format, example, ... at ... mail.com. Your microphone will be automatically muted. When the chairperson asks for public testimony, you may click the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen to indicate that you wish to testify about the agenda item. The chairperson will individually enable each testifier to unmute their microphone. When recognized by the chairperson, please unmute your microphone before speaking and mute your microphone after you finish speaking. Upon request, your Zoom video or similar on-camera option will be enabled to allow you to be visible to the board members and other meeting participants while presenting oral testimony. Please turn off your camera after you conclude your testimony. It is the individual testifier's responsibility to ensure that they have the video and internet capabilities to successfully stream or remotely testify. The board maintains authority to remove and block the individuals who willfully disrupt or compromise the conduct of the meeting. Phone access. If you cannot get internet access, you may get audio-only access by calling the phone number listed at the top of the agenda. Upon dialing the number, you'll be prompted to enter the meeting ID, which is also listed at the top of the agenda. After entering the meeting ID, you'll be asked to either identify your panelist number or wait to be admitted into the meeting. You will not have a panelist number, so please wait until you are admitted to the meeting. When the chair person asks for public testimony, you may indicate you want to testify by entering asterisk and then 9 on your phone's keypad. After entering asterisk and then 9, a voice prompt will let you know the host of the meeting has been notified. When recognized by the chairperson, you may unmute yourself by pressing asterisk and then 6 on your phone. A voice prompt will let you know that you are unmuted. Once you're finished speaking, please enter asterisk, then 6 again to mute yourself. For both internet and phone access when testifying, you'll be asked to identify yourself and the organization, if any, that you represent. Each testifier will be limited to 5 minutes of testimony per agenda item. If connection to the meeting is lost for more than 30 minutes, the meeting will be continued on a specified date and time. This information will be provided on the board's website at https://cccaa.hawaii.gov/pvl/board/meeting-schedule/. Instructions to attend State of Hawaii virtual board meetings may be found online at https://cca.hawaii.gov/pvl/file/2020/08/State of Hawaii Virtual Board Attendee Instructions PDF.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Long. I'll conduct roll call for the agenda. Please indicate if you're alone or someone is present for board members. Dr. Guevara,
Here and alone.
Dr. Fujimoto,
Here alone.
Ms. Fukushima,
Kathy is excused.
okay. Dr. Lau,
Here in person.
Dr. Pine. Here in person. Ms. Shimabuku,
Here in person.
Ms. Yamada,
Here in person.
and Dr. Yamamoto.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay. And this is Andrews, and I'm here in person. In addition to the board members, we have our executive officer, Sheena Choi, and State Attorney General, as other members of our staff to assist with the technical side of this hybrid meeting. There being quorum, I'm calling this meeting to order. Start time for this meeting is 10:08 a.m. Just a friendly reminder to board members, if you're participating virtually, please remember to mute your phone microphone if not speaking. If you step away, please announce that you're doing so and please indicate when you return. Addressing the agenda for this meeting was filed with the Office of the Lieutenant Governor and posted on the state electronic calendar as required by HRS Section 92-7B. Going to the next agenda item, number 2, 2025 legislative session discussion of bills. The board will discuss its position on the attached list of bills introduced for the 2025 legislative session. The board may move into executive session in accordance with HRS Section 92-4 and Section 92-5A1 and 4 to consider and evaluate personal information related to individuals applying for professional or vocational licenses cited in Section 26-9 or both, and to consult with the board's attorney on questions and issues pertaining to the board's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities.
And since there's no applications for this agenda, just that latter citation would apply for executive session.
Excellent. So to start this agenda item, I'm going to let the Executive Officer Choi, if you have any general comments and review regarding the bills that have been listed before we look into each one.
Sure, so if you reference the list that was attached to the agenda, the first bill is Senate Bill or SB 481, measure title relating to community service licenses. I'll read the description, which is the purpose of the bill, is to, it allows a dental graduate from a dental college accredited by the Commission on Dental Accreditation of Canada to be an eligible candidate for a community service license, or CSL. repeals the requirement that the licensing examinations be completed within 5 years of a request for a CSL, repeals the requirement that a CSL applicant provide a copy of an active, unrestricted dental practice license from another state, repeals the prohibition against a person who failed the license examination from obtaining a CSL, requires a CSL to be eligible for conversion to an unrestricted dental practice license when a dental provider who holds a CSL completes at least 5,000 hours of community service to patients in the state. And I'll just provide some initial notes to start. Firstly, that the bill refers to the community service license as a CSL, and just for the purposes of clarity, since the bill only addresses community service dentist license, as the board also offers a community service dental hygiene license for the purpose of clarity and using the correct license letters that a community service dentist is issued. The license should be referred to as the CSVT license for this bill. And this is a little repetitive, but I just want to point out that this is proposing 5 changes to the existing statute, HRS 448-9.6, which governs community service dentist license in Hawaii. So the first amendment proposes to strike the allowance of a diploma or certificate of graduation from a dental college that, quote, has a reciprocal agreement with ADA quota, and adds the allowance of a degree from a dental college accredited by the Commission on Dental Accreditation of Canada, or CDAC. So I just want to note for the board's information that this amendment would restrict the type of foreign dental degrees acceptable by the board for the CSDT licensure to just Canada. So your current HRS 448-9.6 A1 capital A, it allows the board to accept dental colleges with a reciprocal agreement with ADA quota. And so this language actually already includes the acceptance of CDAC dental degrees, or generally refer to them as Canadian degrees, though not all Canadian dental colleges may be accredited by this accrediting body. And that's the only accrediting body in Canada or in the world that currently has this reciprocal agreement with ADA quota. So if the amendment is made as currently written, any other foreign dental program which might in the future have a reciprocal agreement with quota would not be acceptable for CSDT licensure. There are 2 quota accredited foreign universities, so I don't know if quota might be moving in that direction in the future. There's the one in Saudi Arabia and then recently one in Turkey. I don't know if should I continue going through each one, just general notes?
Just general, I mean,
Okay.
yes. We do have-
Maybe I can provide more specific notes as you approach each one, as that might be good, but yeah, just noting that this is amendments to 448-9.6, and your rules don't have anything explicit to community service licenses, so this would affect the statute.
Okay, no, thank you. So at this time, I'd like to open for public testimony. Is there any public testimony?
Please, yeah, you can actually pull up this chair.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just have a seat. If you can state your first and last name, and if you're representing yourself or an organization, and a reminder that you're afforded 5 minutes for all. And then there will be time for that.
That's a lot longer than they give us at the state legislature. Hi, guys. My name is Richmond Lazar. I am testifying on behalf of the Hawaii Dental Association. It's nice to see you guys all in person. I testified last month on Zoom. So we just wanted to, we submitted some written testimony that I believe you folks got, and I just wanted to just provide sort of a brief summary for you folks on. In general, and looking at this session, we're kind of approaching three major issues: access, workforce development, and just general like patient health and safety things. So from an access standpoint, a lot of these measures are in the meeting packet that you folks sent to or attached to this meeting, but HB 1339, for example. There also, I would just like to make a quick correction in our written testimony. We put SB 124. We are not testifying on the constitutional amendment. It was actually SB 120 1241, which is Senator Wah's bill, which also addresses the general excise tax for medical and dental. From the workforce side, I believe this is in the meeting packet also, SB 557 proposed by Senator Coit, or she's the first primary introducer. This is sort of an access issue. It's also sort of a workforce development issue to help with some of the access and workforce development issues in our more rural areas, particularly in Mohi. And from the patient health side, a lot of things relating to tobacco and sugary beverage taxes and things like that we're also supportive of. So just wanted to flag those as well. HB 380 is one of those, which is the it's from the Hawaii State Association of Counties package. And it has to do with taking away county preemption for regulating tobacco and things like that. And then the last thing I'd like to flag, this is sort of not in those three categories necessarily, but this is the oral health task force that's also in the meeting packet, HB 1431 and SB 1516. So with that, thank you. Of course, this is all subject to further discussion and on our end, but just wanted to get that on the record.
Thank you. And what was the bill number for the tobacco regulation?
Yeah, HB 380.
380.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Does anybody have any comments from the board or?
And I did let the board know that we received HTA's testimony on Friday, though it's after business hours, so we distributed it to the board members this morning. And I let Melissa, who submitted it on behalf of HTA, know that we'll read it for the record. It seems the bills that you mentioned and then are listed, the board probably will be discussing them after a couple bills, so I'll read it at that time if that's all right.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
No, thank you. Thank you. At this time, is there any other public testimony?
All right, we do not have anyone wishing to provide oral testimony.
Okay, see no public testimony for the public testimony. We'll open for board comments and discussions at this time.
I have a comment, Jonathan Lau, board member. For Senate Bill 481, I think the intent is good to try to get more help for the community service centers, but this bill seems to have many things that I have concerns about. One thing about decreasing the amount of dentists that can apply for this bill. And the other thing is, I think it removes too many safeguards to the public for dentists who we cannot vet or may not have any practical experience doing dentistry. A third thing would be the pathway for a full unrestricted license after working for only 2.5 years in the clinic, where they can go out away from the clinic, drop all quests and be a private practitioner. Another part of this is only passing part 2 of the national boards doesn't really show any clinical expertise of the applicant. You know, part 1 and part 2, yeah, you can read about it, but dentistry is really hands-on and you need to somehow see if that works. So in the ADEX or CERTA national test, you can see how the candidates will work on live patients or a mannequin, at least, to see if they have the necessary skills to do a good job. Some of the ADEX tests, half of the students fail in the United States. And, you know, if you don't have at least that, you know, what kind of applicants can we get? So I don't think this bill is quite worked out. That's my comment.
No, thank you. And I would like to make a comment. This is Andrew Zale. I mean, when we look at the standards of licensure, practically all the states, except maybe a couple exceptions like New York regarding presidency, the national standard is a clinical hands-on licensure examination that tests the competency and skills of the provider, you know, coming in, which is the baseline and just the bare minimum competence requirement regarding that. So I agree with Dr. Lau that I agree with the intent in trying to get more access, but then what we really have to take a look at are many of these requirements in this statute kind of works together to,
Protect
guess,
the public.
yeah, and kind of ensure competence and being vetted by other states, for example, and things like that. And I think it is a compromise that we have to make regarding public health, welfare, and safety that we have to take a look.
Can you talk a little bit more, Dr. Sue, about like the clinical hands-on examinations? What minimum competencies are those testing for? Like what might be in jeopardy for patient health, safety, welfare if someone didn't pass those tests?
So like the AID exam, the credits exam, they have, an endodontic portion, there's a restorative, prosthodontics, there's perio. And what they do is try to test you in different procedures, common procedures that would be actually done in the clinical practice. What they do is they strictly grade things regarding certain requirements to make sure it's within the standard of, standard of care. Where they would review actually the let's say, for example, restorations or pros, they do preparation and evaluation of the actual preparation, the restoration.
If they can do
Okay.
that calculus and remove
Exactly.
it. If they can do a root canal and not destroy the root or, it's all these things that are vetted and multiple checkers, all standardized to make sure that it's done correctly.
This is Steve Pine. I, of course, like to echo what has been said already about this bill. One of the questions I had upon reading it was, it seems like that the intent here is to help fill up what would be perceived as vacant positions at community health centers or community centers or mobile outreach programs. I'm curious on what that current vacancy rate is at those locations. It's cited that, that 106 licenses have been issued, but there were only, I think it said 15 that's verified as current, valid, and good standing. And I'm wondering if, opening this up, if it would actually help fill vacancies or if those vacancies do in fact exist as it stands. And of course, like you pointed out, this as it is written would actually restrict more as far as the Canadian schools are concerned, or what could be perceived as the expansion of CODA because it's already written in there.
Which that also might be maybe a misunderstanding with the bill writers or introducers, so.
Very much
We
so.
can also on our end make the applications clearer and things like that, though we do explain that when people inquire.
And I think that, as at least as I have understood it, the National Dental Board's, part 2 is not a hands-on course. It's only a written course. And so I believe that would make Hawaii the first state in the US to allow somebody to gain licensure, if I'm not mistaken, without having done a clinical examination or a postgraduate residence program.
So some dental colleges allow if you've done a if you've done.
There is one state, New York, that will allow licensure. There may be a few others that will allow it that way too, but.
Not too sure if fast, but in Wisconsin with Marquette, if you graduate from the dental school, you're allowed to get a license from Wisconsin.
I do believe that the intent here is very good. I say that.
And for the public's benefit, I believe that the board members who've spoken so far have been mentioning this hands-on clinical because for the community service dentist type, the ADEX, which is the only clinical exam that the board accepts for dentist licensure, is not required for the community service license type.
Dr. Guevara, Dr. Fujimoto, did you have any comments regarding discussion?
This is Dr. Guevara. I agree with what everyone is saying, and this has actually come up in the past, this type of legislation, and it's one where I'm just going to cut to the chase. Where I really don't support how this bill is written. So, I mean, we've had in the past where we would say we support the intent of the bill, but as written, we cannot support the bill, and that is, just trying to cut to the chase is probably what my recommendation would be.
Dr. Kabar, could you provide some like historical notes on what were some of the reasons why the board might have
Well,
been
some of the for what's going on, the way the bill is written, it's going to undermine our statutes basically, because we have the autonomy as a board to control, not, I don't want to say control, but we vet who is going to come into the state by the 8X exam. That is our criteria to determine whether someone is, meets the minimum competency to be a dentist in the state of Hawaii. That's also across the board for most of the states, other than the states that take PGY1 or allow you to, take a residency before you come in. So it's our way of gauging whether this, the dentist that's coming in would be vetted to do this. In this bill, the way it's written, it will supersede anyone taking a licensure exam because they have to just meet certain number of hours, which is about 2,500. I just remember about 2,000 hours worth, and then they can go from a community service license to a regular dental license. So it's kind of undermining how we actually vet someone to get a regular dental license. So that's what it seems like in this bill. So I think by the way our laws are written right now, we have, ways of getting a community service license that's working for us. Again, I know it looks like they're trying to help people get licenses in the state through community service, but then also come in after you do a certain number of hours and get a full license. So that kind of defeats the purpose of the community service license itself. So again, that's kind of what I'm looking at. Any other question?
No, thank you. I do have a comment. I believe in 2023, the community service license was revised for the dentist and dental hygienist. And my understanding from the people that drafted that, firsthand knowledge is they did look at all the different requirements and weigh the options of trying to make it more accessible for applicants to qualify for community service license. However, also looking at the public health and welfare at that time. In the 2023 revised bill, it did do some significant upgrades regarding the organized organizations that actually can hire applicants. It kind of spread out the definition to community health centers, rural health clinics, mobile outreach programs, things like that. And in that portion too, it did identify the 88 quota accredited schools and quota reciprocal agreements with other organizations, so.
Yeah, those were two significant updates to the statute, yep.
If I'm not mistaken as well, that an individual would then be able to, if this went through, get a license without having been practicing since 1992?
Yes, so in my
Actively
research
practicing, I should say.
on the ADA CODA website, so the current statute allows for one of the qualifications to qualify for the license is to pass the MBDE Part 2. And that was first administered as a standalone exam in 1992. So with the second recommendation of this current bill, it's recommending removal of the requirement that the board exams be completed within 5 years of the date of application. So if just that provision were passed, then the board would accept any NBDE Part 2 exam, and again, that would go back as far as 1992. So potentially someone who passed the boards in 92 and practiced for a little while could have gone on inactive or retired, or other life events could have happened and they've been maybe out of practice, and then are applying for the community service dentist license, and their 1992 or an older board exam would be acceptable.
And then, I just want to make one more comment, personally regarding this. There is a need for, dentists on the neighbor islands. There are oral health disparities and especially active participating dentists for Medicaid population. So I strongly agree with the intent with this. Hopefully we can find other ways to increase the applicants to have more active Medicaid patients. Medicaid dentists, and also having dentists be able to, be more populated on the neighbor islands as a need, especially, for example, the Molokai bill regarding, retention and recruitment for providers for their needs. So at this time, is there any other comments or discussions? Or did you want to review anything else regarding?
Just want to, and just in case, so, I know you still have to vote, but on each of them, I know we haven't talked about the fourth proposed amendment, and that one removes the disqualification of an individual who has failed any part of the ADEX exam from qualifying for CSDT licensure. So currently, the way your statute is written, if an individual has failed any of those 5 parts of the ADEX exam, they would automatically don't qualify for CSDT licensure. So does the board have any comments on that one?
So that means they haven't passed the ADEX, but they can retake the part that they failed, pass it, and then get the ADEX, right?
No, so if they've failed any of the parts.
Any part?
Yeah.
Okay, and then they didn't retake it and pass, so they have an incomplete ADEX.
So they wouldn't even be allowed to retake. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's kind of like a one chance. If someone wants to apply for the license type while also testing, they're taking the risk if they happen to fail one of the parts. They wouldn't, yeah, they wouldn't qualify.
That's when they're a dentist, they take the ADEX exam or before the,
At any point, but before they apply for
Oh, okay.
CSDT licensure.
Okay.
Yes.
I have comments regarding that. This is Andrew Zale. For that, I wouldn't mind seeing that revision regarding that. As long as they do pass the,
before they apply for the license. Because I see lots of them will fail one part, then retake it and pass it. And then, they're good, they passed everything. Then they should apply afterwards, yeah.
So you would be in favor of supporting this removal, so they could continuously test, pass or fail, but
Prior
if
to
they,
applying
for
for the
the
license.
regular, the
Yes.
unrestricted DT license. Okay.
so I think that would restrict a lot of the applicants because there's so many sections and it's very common for someone to just fail one section that would disqualify them from qualifying for even applying for this license.
I personally, this is Steve Pine, I personally agree with that as well. And I think especially when the ADAX was a in-person or on a live patient examination, I should say, because if a patient failed to show, that would be considered a failure.
Yeah.
And, that's at no fault of the applicant, but now they are.
And now it's all mannequin based, is that, do you have the
It is,
option?
yeah.
Okay, it's all mannequin.
So that's not as much of an issue.
But if they had a past fail.
Exactly.
The reason, okay, and that wouldn't necessarily be a comment on their dentistry.
Exactly.
I see.
So I know for the ADEX, it's all mannequin based. However, if there is a state board that goes back to the requirements or requires that it has to be in person, ADEX, the licensure organization will accommodate for the state if anything changes. So just for clarification.
Does anyone else have any comments on that specific one?
This is Paul Guevara. I actually agree with Dr. Seo. I think I've voiced this in the past. That is the one section of the community service license that, it may not be your fault and you fail one section and then you lose your community service license and you can't practice if you're trying to get your regular license. Even for the law, I wouldn't be opposed to having that actually stricken from the community service license. That if you failed it, that's like one and you can't reapply. So that is, to me, very restrictive. So if that is something that we're discussing, I would recommend that be removed.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. So perhaps that can be a way to, you open up the license without maybe jeopardizing health, safety, and welfare.
And if I can make further comment, Steve Pine, yeah, if that is completely, stricken
Mhm.
from it, I'd still would obviously be in favor, sorry, of that. I think another part is somebody that does have a community health center service license that maybe then wants to get an unrestricted license that then takes the ADAC.
Mhm.
That's a real risk for them as it's currently written, because if they do fail a single section, that's it, they lose their current livelihood
Mhm.
in the state of Hawaii. And so it's very discouraging for people to want to move,
Pursue.
on, and, even if then it had said not, that they have a certain period of time to retake and pass, so that their livelihood's not cut.
Mhm. Okay.
So either way, I think that is pretty restrictive.
Good comments. What about the requirements? So the third proposal is to remove the requirement for the applicant to hold an active unrestricted license from another state. So currently your statute requires that they have a license in another state, and that requirement to hold a license in another state, not having failed the ADEX, and then the current limitation or timeline for the board exam scores. I believe the intent of that language was to help the board assess whether an individual had that clinical competency to practice when they couldn't base that on having an ADEX exam. So interested in hearing your thoughts on that one. I know that I'm asking in isolation, and so asking for your opinion on it in isolation, but also in considering the entirety of the bill as well.
This is Dr. Lang. I have a comment. So this provision, I think it's kind of like a double check, like most of the other states, the 49 other states, to practice in one of those states, they would have to take the ADEX to pass. So that would make them, a better candidate for us. There might be one or two states that don't accept the ADEX to get licensed. I'm not sure, but that's what I'm thinking. So it's sort of like a safeguard kind of provision.
I think it's also like if you had a license this is Steve Pine, in like, for example, a state that, took ADAC, but only from this year forward.
Or a state that accepts ADEX, plus something like credits or another hands-on clinical exam.
So they'll have some sort of hands-on
There's been some
thing. So
kind
that's
of
that's a good, it's a safeguard, and most likely they would have to have done it anyway to apply here. So
This is Steve Pine. The only thing that I don't know, maybe add or think about with that is that it almost to me seems like that should also be the case, like as that or has completed a post-grad residency program that is CODA approved, because you have a state like New York, that is the requirement. So somebody could complete that, get the New York license, and then subsequently get the Hawaii Community Health Center service license. And the only reason they're then in effect getting the New York license is to get the community health center license, but have since still meeting.
yeah, that makes sense.
So you're saying that even our current language doesn't
Allow for, yes, for example, you have
some outliers?
exactly, a student that comes and does a post-grad residency program, would like to stay at a center or like to work at a center, but then can't without getting a license in, for example, New York, and then having that transfer over to Hawaii.
I also wanted to note that if this amendment is accepted, then it would, and I don't know if the bill writers intended this, may restrict again certain individuals from applying via HRS 448-9.6 A1E2, which is that they did not complete the board's part 2. They could alternatively provide evidence of active clinical dental practice of 1,000 hours per year for 3 years. But if they don't hold a license in any other state, they could not have gotten active clinical dental practice. So it would restrict that current existing pathway to CSDT licensure, and I'm not sure if that was the intent.
I think this is Andrew. The way it's written and proposed, if everything is passed and they don't require a state license, that 1,000 clinical hours could be in Canada, it could be somewhere else.
Anywhere.
Because at this time, it kind of limited to, a state licensure in the US at this time. So it does open that to more ambiguity.
Yeah. That is a very good point.
This is Dr. Rivera speaking again. Just like I stated earlier, I mean, we're going around, I hate to say this, we're going around in a circle right now. And, we can kind of look at this. It kind of undermines our laws as written. I know they're trying to help us get more dentists in, but I'm already going to state that if I had to make any comments, it's, again, we may support the intent of the bill, but as written, we cannot support it. And I'm already going to say that's, if I had to make a vote, or that's what I would say. Said I think we should go with, we support the intent of the bill, but as written, we cannot support it as a board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Guevara. Lois, I also wanted to ask your opinion, because I know this is specifically addressing community service dentists, but because it's, related to the community service dental hygiene license, it has potential impact on maybe in future legislative sessions if similar legislation is passed for dental hygiene. I don't know if you had any comments.
I agree with what had been said for the dentists, for all of those reasons.
Do any specifically stand out to you?
Okay, so a major part of it is the clinical exam portion. And there are a couple of states who do not require clinical exams for hygiene.
For hygiene.
Yeah. And so if you get a license, say in California without your clinical exam, you can only practice in California. You can't go to other states at the present time. But that doesn't mean
They
that-
could work 1,000 hours there and then apply for this.
Right. Never having been tested, right?
I think we discussed this in great detail. I just want to open up, are there any other public comments? I'll open it up.
Virtually, there are no attendees requesting to provide testimony.
So I believe the board, it's necessary for it to vote and take a position on this bill. Can I get any motion to vote on?
Okay, well, I make a motion to vote on this bill.
Oh, and just as a refresher, so the board will have to vote on your position on all of the bills that we're discussing today, and you have several options. So the board can vote to support the bill, oppose the bill, appreciate the intent of the bill and offer comments, or you can direct me to track it. That's not a board position, but that would just mean that I'm tracking it for you, and I'll provide a report at the close of the legislative session.
Okay, good.
So the motion would need to be for one of those options.
okay.
So support, oppose, appreciate the intent of with comments, or just track.
Okay, Dr. Long, I make a motion to appreciate the intent of the bill, but do not support it. Or with comments, yeah, with comments.
And then the comments, I think I have a general idea of your comments. Specifically, I wanted to confirm, would you want to comment that the board, has concerns with with 4 of the amendments? So numbers, the first one, maybe just clarifying that if the intent is to allow Canadians to qualify, that's already allowable. So that'd be the first comment. For the second amendment about removing the requirement for the board exams to be completed within 5 years of the date of application. I'll note your comments on the MBDE Part 2, not testing for clinical hands-on, and the board's comments about the importance of a clinical hands-on component to assessing clinical competency, and also maybe the date that it was first administered being quite long from a date of application if submitted sometime around 1992. For number 3, removing the requirement for the applicant to hold an active unrestricted license from another state. So I'll mention the comments about that perhaps being there as a safeguard, and that the language doesn't note those alternative pathways to licensure that some states have, such as completing a post-grad residency program. For number 4, which would remove the disqualification of an individual who has failed any part of the ADEX exam, it seems from the discussion that the board would be inclined to be supportive of that, for the reasons that you mentioned in your discussion. And for the 5th amendment, which would add a provision that a CSDT licensee may automatically convert their license to an unrestricted DT license after completing 5,000 hours of practice in the state. The board would have concerns with that, particularly because it would circumvent the current requirement for DT licensure to have passed the ADEX exam. Is that the primary reasoning? Okay, and then I just wanted to note too, that the way the bill is written for section 5, the CSDT current licensees who have over 5,000 hours, the bill proposes to automatically convert them as kind of like a trial. Were there any additional comments that you would like me to add?
A second.
Okay.
Joy, second. Okay. What we'll do for clarification for each board member, I'm gonna be doing a roll call vote at this time. Does anybody recuse or abstain from voting? Seeing none, I'm gonna go to the roll call vote. And again, the different options was reviewed by Sheena regarding how we can vote. First would be Dr. Guevara.
Yes.
Was that support or?
As what we are proposing.
So the motion was to appreciate the intent of with comments. So
Okay.
the roll call
Yeah.
vote, do you agree with that?
Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarification.
Yeah.
Dr. Fujimoto,
Yes, I agree as well.
Dr. Lau,
Yes.
Dr. Pine,
Yes.
Ms. Shimbabuku, Ms. Yamada.
Yes.
This is Andrew, yes. So this time we voted to appreciate the intent of the bill with comment.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll move to the second bill that is on the priority. That would be SB 1373 and HB 1054. And this is relating to administrative licensure actions against sex offenders. I know that this bill is set for testimony and hearing. Sheena, would you mind giving us update on this?
Yeah, so if you're following along on the bill list, it's the last 2. We're taking just those out of order. So this is again SB, the second to the left bill. Sorry, towards the bottom of the first page. Sorry, too many bill numbers. SB 1373 and HB 1054, and they're companion bills. And so that means that the language of the bill is the same, but a version was introduced in the House, and there was also a Senate version. So the bill titles are relating to administrative licensure actions against sex offenders. The description is, and then the purpose of this bill is to authorize the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs and certain licensing boards to automatically revoke and refuse to renew, restore, reinstate the professional licenses of registered sex offenders. So just generally, the bill is very long because it includes language for multiple boards, primarily maybe medical or in the healthcare profession. So where it relates to the Board of Dentistry is maybe 12. And then HRS 447, which is on the sheet. And then on 315, HRS 448, which is the dentist statute. And the language is all the same for the various statute amendments. And I would recommend you make take a position on it, that it would just, your comments and everything is specific to just the dentist related statutes. So as Dr. Sue mentioned, these two bills are both already scheduled for hearing in the CPN and CPC committees respectively in the House and the Senate. And they're both scheduled for hearing tomorrow, Tuesday, at different times. And so because of the timing of that, and our meeting is today, all testimony has to be submitted 24 hours in advance of the meeting. So because of that tight timeline, I did tap the legislative liaisons to help provide a position. So just reminding the board and the public that at your January 13, 2025 meeting, you appointed the chair, the vice chair, Kathy Fukushima and Joyce Yamada to serve as legislative liaisons for the 2025 legislative session. And that was to provide positions and testify on legislative matters on behalf of the board. So the legislative liaisons did get back to me and express that supporting the bill would be a position that the board would take. So I did submit testimony on the board's behalf with that position. It is available on the board's website, and I can send you that as well after. But just briefly, it was in support just based on the imbalance of power that dental healthcare providers have with their patients. A lot of the setting of dental care provision is one-on-one, and so that also creates a higher risk and need for protection for health, safety, and welfare, and also that dental providers treat pediatric patients who are particularly vulnerable. So I expressed that from the legislative liaisons in the testimony. But are there any questions? So we would still take a vote. It's kind of almost like ratifying that position. But are there any questions, or if there's any public testimony?
So this time I'll open up for public testimony.
Virtually, we do not have anyone wishing to provide oral testimony.
Okay, see no public testimony at this time. I'll move it over to board comments and discussion. And if we can get some input from the board members on this bill.
Dr. Lau, I support this bill, especially what was said about privacy, one-on-one situations and protecting young children, big dentists, close the door and who knows what happens. So I support this.
This is Paul Guevara. I'll just make a motion that we as the board should support this bill.
Joyce. At this time, does anybody recuse or abstain from voting?
Do we have to vote on each individually?
We can do them together.
Together,
Yes.
sister companions, okay.
Okay, if you can just say, I'm gonna do a group vote, say aye to support.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone oppose? Anyone appreciate, intend, and offer comments? Or anyone wants to track this bill? Okay, based on the voting, we're voting to support this bill, these bills. Thank you. Now, moving on to the additional legislative bills that's listed on the list that was provided. I'm gonna have Sheena review these bills generally as a group. And we'll take open public testimony, comments, and discussion as a whole for efficiency and time.
Thank you, Dr. Okay, so now we are going in order on the list. So after SB 481, as Dr. Sue mentioned, there's a number of different bills, and I'll read the bill numbers. So HB 311 and its companion SB 1241, HB 281, HB 572, SB 1172, SB 557, HB 1339, HB 1431, and its companion SB 1560. So all of these bills likely do not require the board's testimony, as they don't directly relate to licensure or the practice of dentistry or dental hygiene. You can, as we've mentioned, direct me to track these bills, and a lot of them have recurred in past sessions, such as the GET tax exemption. And in the past, you've directed me to track it just because it is tangentially related to the practice of dentistry, or sorry, to the dental profession. And if I track it, I'll just provide a summary at the close of the session with how the bills played out. And if there's specific questions, we can go over those as well, but they are what is listed. I will just note that there's several bills, so HB 281, HB 572, and HB 1339. Those are related to GET tax exemption. The wording of those bills is identical. And let's see. And then the ones that are a bit different is SB 557, and that was the one on the medical study. And SB 1172 on Hawaii insurance covering vision and dental. And then the two bills at the end, HB 1431 and SB 1516. Those are related to the oral health task force. And that those bills, similar bills were proposed over the last at least two, I believe, legislative sessions. But they do not list the Board of Dentistry as one of the required participatory stakeholders. So that's why I'm not recommending that provide testimony, but I could also track it on your.
Thank you, Shimon. Is there any public testimony at this time?
Sorry, I did mention that I would read the HDA. written
Apologize
testimony.
if we can circle back.
No, sorry, forgot about that. So the gentleman who was here earlier gave their oral testimony, but written testimony was also submitted by HDA. And I'll read it just for the record. Aloha Board of Dentistry, HDA advocates for measures that promote patient health and safety and increase the availability of oral health services. We support tobacco cessation and a sugary beverage tax. Of the bills the BOD is considering, we are currently planning to support bills that reduce excess taxes on healthcare services, including oral health and dental services such as HB 1339, HB 311. It said SB 124, but the correction was made. It should read SB 1241, HB 281, and HB 572, subject, of course, to further review. We also plan to support SB 557 as a step towards ensuring ongoing healthcare workforce development efforts, and bills that would establish an oral health task force such as HB 1431 and SB 1516. We want to ensure that the voice of dentists are well represented on task forces related to dentistry. We are monitoring many other measures and appreciate the opportunity to share with the Board of Dentistry the position of the Hawaii Dental Association. HDA is a statewide member organization representing dentists practicing in Hawaii and licensed by the state of Hawaii's Board of Dentistry. HDA members are committed to the health and well-being of people of Hawaii from Cape Cod and everyone in between Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. And all of those bills that I mentioned in the written testimony are on this list, and I'm recommending to track.
At this time, again, is there any public testimony?
Thank you, Chair. There's no one wishing to provide testimony.
Okay, see no public testimony, we'll move on to board comments and discussion. Are there any board comments or discussion regarding these bills? No. Okay, if we can, I'd say I'd like to recommend a motion to track these bills, if we can get a motion, track.
Make a motion, Steve Pine, to track these bills as stated.
So at this time, does anybody recuse or abstain from voting?
Nope.
Okay, say aye to approve.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, voted to support these. I mean to track.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this time, we'll go on to the next agenda item, which would be
Adjournment.
Adjournment.
This is a reminder to the public, this was a special legislative session, meeting, so only legislation and legislative matters were on the agenda. The next board meeting on Monday, March 10th, 2025 is a regular board meeting.
Okay, yes. I want to thank everybody for taking their time to participate. I know we just had a board meeting earlier, so your time and efforts regarding this is important, and thank you.
Thank you.